Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Zan Winterton. He's the Managing Director of North America at LMRE. Zan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Kelsey.
Absolutely. So, Zan, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I began my career working for a cybersecurity startup in London. I joined on the sales side, so started off as an SDR, and then I worked there for about a year, and we got backed by a number of VCs, and then I was asked to join the head of sales to move to New York as they were setting up operations out in the US. And so was with the company for about a year out in New York, and that's how I guess I got a taste for American life. And then I was introduced to LMRE along the way, who were looking to have someone set up the New York office. And I obviously had never been in the recruitment space, and it had been an area of interest to me because there were a number of my friends that were in there in that sector. And I thought that my skill set kind of fit that quite well. And so I joined the business just before the pandemic took hold. So always a good time to start recruiting when there are no jobs. But I then ended up spending a couple of years in London, kind of building out the team that we have now, and have recently moved back to New York. And I'm in the office in FireEye right now.
Tell me a little bit more about LMRE.
Yes, so LMRE is a specialist real estate technology recruitment firm. So we originally started as a traditional real estate recruitment firm. That's when we were called Lloyd May. So it's Lloyd May Real Estate is where the name comes from. And we worked on traditional real estate positions with real estate clients like CBRE, Cushman, those sorts of folks. And we pivoted into this area after, well, we did that for about 7 to 8 years, and then we came into what's called the PropTech space, dubbed the PropTech space. In about 2018, there was a bit of a crossover. And so we work with a wide range of startups, VC firms, real estate investment firms, and brokerages, anywhere at that intersection of real estate and technology. And that includes the construction tech market as well.
Okay. So, for our listeners who don't know what PropTech is, explain that for me.
So PropTech, so it's a pretty broad term, and you can think of it. I mean, real estate's the biggest asset class there is in the world, and you can kind of imagine the real estate markets similar to where the financial markets were about 10 years ago. And then there began, a lot of fintech companies that were coming to address the inefficiencies within that sector. And the same can be said to the real estate market. So whether that's to do with sustainability or energy efficiencies within buildings, or it's to do with helping with lease abstraction or leasing protocols, or helping with deal flow within real estate investment firms, or maybe it's looking at the data. So lots of information has historically always been manually kept. It's on Excel files. It's a very messy situation. So there's copious numbers of firms that have started up, sometimes by people who were originally in the real estate industry, to try and solve those issues. So that's a lot on kind of the startup side of what makes up the PropTech sector. And as you can imagine, there are so many pieces of the real estate market that are inefficient because it's pretty antiquated. So there's lots of opportunity for changing the status quo.
And that's kind of where LMRE fits in, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the USP of LMRE is that we're solely focused on working at the intersection of real estate and technology, whereas there are a number of recruitment firms, I mean thousands of recruitment firms, many of which might focus on, let's say, SaaS technology, or they may focus on real estate. But it's actually that intersection, although it's a niche, there are actually plethora of companies that require that experience across the real estate and technology sector. And that's where we come to bridge the gap, often like a knowledge gap, to help people, whether they're trying to become more innovative as a company, if they're a traditional real estate firm, or indeed a startup that is selling into the real estate industry, because you need to have the skills and abilities to understand technology, but then also the relationships that exist within real estate, which are quite nuanced and, you know, can be quite complex.
So talking about the intersection is a point that differentiates LMRE from your competition. What are some other ways that LMRE is able to stand out in the space?
Yeah, I think that LMRE, what's unique is, I guess, you know, our background. So we spent many years within the real estate market, and so our founders and many people within the business have got a background there. We're also, you know, female founded. So Louisa is one of the co-founders, and she's worked with Richard, the other co-founder, for a number of years. She's really well known in the space and has, you know, been a great advocate for not only like, I guess, diversity within the sector, but also, you know, developing very deep relationships and partnerships with people across the sector. And we've kind of built upon that within or across the industry. So it means that we're not just someone that plays in the market by finding, you know, top talent and then disappearing. We're actually embedding ourselves within the VCs that invest into these startups. We're going to the events where real estate technology is talked about, discussed. Everyone within the business is also an advocate of kind of their own brand, because we know that the importance of that for any company, and especially ours, because, you know, you can sit quite dormantly, you know, as a recruiter and passively do your work and be successful. But what we find is that if you're, you know, a recruitment consultant that can talk about, you know, the insights that you're seeing within the industry, you can be on a panel and talk about whether it's ESG or diversity. You know, I think that adds value and also adds legitimacy to why someone would want to speak to you, either as a candidate who's looking for a new career change, or equally a company that's looking to, you know, get assistance on hiring, you know, why they would speak to you over a more generalist recruiter.
Interesting. So talk to me a little bit more about what working with LMRE would look like.
Yeah, so I guess there's two sides of the coin. Obviously, one is, you know, being a candidate who's looking for a new position, and the other side is on the client side. So as a candidate, what we would do is we typically sit down one of the consultants, depending upon which area you sit in. So whether you're on the tech side, so an engineer, software developer, or what we call the commercial side, sales, marketing, operations, and we have our team split out into sort of role functions. Part of the company is also sort of split out dependent upon the vertical within real estate. So everyone kind of has their own specialisms, and that's to ensure that each consultant kind of has an oversight on their sector within the PropTech market. So we would sit down and align you with the right consultant. Some people cross over to a couple and understand kind of their background, assessing their skill set, what they've achieved at what companies, and also where their interests lie. And then we're then allowing them to have insight into which companies we're working with. We're also letting them know about our connections within the market as well. And then plugging them into the right companies that we think fit, obviously working alongside that candidate. And then we will work alongside that candidate through any process that they're in. So making sure that they're prepared for interviews, but also the aftercare of like onboarding. So we have a relationship with these clients to make sure that, you know, the onboarding experience is a good one that they can also learn from, but also keeping in touch with that candidate throughout the process and like longevity of their career. Because a big part of what, you know, how LMRE is successful is kind of the referral basis that we have with candidates and clients. And that's how we kind of keep our ecosystem of our network, which is essentially how we are successful, continuing. So that's on the candidate side. On the client side, it's really an introductory call with a founder or a hiring manager to understand their business, what their business goals are, what the strategy is, what sector they play in, or subsector within real estate tech they play in, and then figuring out, what, also letting them know kind of LMRE, what our background is, and figuring out what the roles are that they're interested in hiring for, and making sure that we have the ability to deliver on those, and then essentially setting up a structure about how we're going to help them on that specific search. Beyond that, it's once they're kind of in the LMRE ecosystem and we have an idea of the profile of the people, because we're speaking to people every day within this area, we're also saying, okay, we've spoken to someone who's, a CRO or a CFO who's currently just come on the market. We think they're very aligned to your business. And that's often how we also help people or companies grow their businesses just outside of the roles that we work on a project basis. So yeah, that's generally how we work from a hiring perspective. And then we also do, like, we have our own podcast that's hosted by Louisa that sort of talks about businesses and the challenges they're facing, the technology that they're bringing to the table to disrupt. So there is a bigger piece around, I guess, helping the general community within PropTech. We also created a PropTech annual salary survey that we did alongside Fifth Wall, which is a VC, to give insights to people so that they can have more awareness and transparency about salaries within the industry. So there's a few things that we do, I guess, outside of the day-to-day.
And then talking about the company side.
So on the company side, so that was more like the clients is kind of like the companies that we work with. That tends to be our relationship in terms of filling positions.
And is there a specific size company that you see trends in working with?
So generally speaking, when it comes to the startup side, it's probably late seed stage through to Series A, Series B. And that's more because of, I'd say, the immaturity of the PropTech market. There aren't a vast number of companies that have graduated to Series D level, although we do work with a number of companies that are sort of post-IPO and larger businesses. So I think as the years go on, the companies that we've had relationships with that are in that late seed stage to Series A are obviously going to be gravitating towards the later stage. So that's on the startup side. And then then we work with large real estate firms, real estate brokerages like Savills, JNLT, for example. So there are some much larger organizations that we work with also on that real estate and technology aspect.
So you said that a lot of the company and a lot of the business is based on referrals, both on the candidate and the company side. What other ways have you helped to build LMRE's brand?
Yeah, so I think word of mouth has been a great aspect for us. There's a chap called Michael Beckerman who is the CEO of Cretech, which is one of the most well-regarded sort of PropTech or commercial real estate tech events in the sector. And he's been a great advocate of ours kind of when we were early on coming into the US. And from that, we sort of filtrated through a number of great partnerships with either VC firms like the likes of Metaprop and Fifth Wall, and getting kind of more ingrained into people's portfolios. And then I think that going to events like that has really been a huge help to us, because real estate's a very relationship-driven business. And so although it was difficult, we did manage to get out, as obviously we were a UK company, to the US a couple of times during COVID. And we also were able to go out there before COVID happened. And I think, if that hadn't happened, it might have been a much slower progression than what we've had over the last couple of years. So I think that those are some aspects. We also, as I said, we make sure that kind of everyone in the business is also peddling their own marketing. So whether that's talking to founders, interviewing them, producing blog posts, getting on panels, And I think if anyone looks at the LMRE LinkedIn page, there's often quite a lot of information being shared about insights in the market. And I think that helps us, give off a picture of hopefully that we know what we're talking about, but also giving valuable insights to people, even if, we're not directly working with them right now.
So if a listener is listening and they want to start to get involved with LMRE, where would they begin?
So I would say begin probably by looking at our LinkedIn or our website. They could obviously reach out to me directly, but I think it's always useful to have a bit of research into LMRE in terms of what our focus is and potentially what are the goals, or what are people trying to achieve as they begin to have a relationship or a conversation with us. We're always happy to have conversations with people to provide as much sort of consultation as possible. And also, if someone is new to PropTech, then we're very happy to kind of give our insights and overview of the industry, what it involves, and sort of ideas that we can share with them.
Yeah. So if you wanted to leave our listeners with one nugget, either about LMRE or the industry, recruitment, the space, what would that be?
I think it would be that the real estate tech industry has got so much potential, and we're seeing more and more people becoming increasingly interested from like adjacent markets. So, the fintech, insurtech markets. I think that while fintech has grown like tremendously over the last 10 years, I think over the last, even 6 months with tech stocks kind of having a drop off, there does seem to be a level of buoyancy within the real estate tech market. And I think that's because there is still so much opportunity. We're at a very early stage of kind of growth within the market. And you can see the amount of investment, like the increase that's happened over the last 3 years from VCs into the space. So I think there's lots of opportunities for people to get involved in early stage companies that are likely to be $1 billion companies. So I would say, if you've never heard of it, it is interesting. Real estate, I think, probably gets a bad rap because it can come across as pretty uninteresting. But I think as a result of it being infused with technology, there's lots of cool companies with that sort of startup culture, which I think people should take a look at. So yeah, that's kind of what I tell people.
That's fantastic. Well, Zan, this has been a great conversation, about the real estate market, the future, real estate tech, rather, the market, what that's going to look like in the future and where it's going, and recruitment as well. I really appreciate you being on the podcast Business Ninjas today.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kelsey. That was great.